Okay, moving right along. Right, now that we've looked at the edit modes and we know a little bit about what kinds of items we have in the scene, let's get back to looking at these panels that we skipped over in the first video, and we'll go into a little bit more detail about those because especially the items panel allows us to select things, and in the last video we were looking at how to select things, and there's a few more ways that you can select items, so let's look at that now. So get rid of that, and we have with the F6 key you can open the items panel. So in the items panel we can see a list of all the items in the scene, depending on what we've got chosen up here. At the moment we have bodies, so we're looking at all the bodies in the scene, and we can mouse over here to highlight them in the scene. You can see them as I move the mouse over here, they're highlighting so I can quickly see which is which. And if they are off the screen, we'll see a very helpful arrow like this, get out of the way, showing where they are if they're not on the screen, like these two there. The antenna pieces are over there to the left. So this just lets us quickly see what each of these relate to. And right now the scene has everything nicely labeled, so it's probably not quite so important, but quite often if you're setting up a lot of bodies you get to the point where they're all just called like body 1 or body 2 or body 25 or something. So when you come to label them, it's quite handy to quickly jump to see which one they are. Okay, and we have a little checkbox here, and we can see that when we select, let's select these three bodies here. When we select a body, the checkbox here turns on, and we can see that those ones are selected, and we can also use this checkbox here to deselect and select things. And my mouse is going a little bit funny. What's going on? Alright. So we can select and deselect things here like this. Of course we can undo and redo everything. And we can do the same kind of actions as that for all items types. So we can select fixtures, and just switch into fixtures mode here. Select some fixtures, deselect them, mouse over to locate them. If they're off the screen, they'll be pointed out like this. So everything works pretty much the same for each item type in this list. And we can, so we have joints, images, just 3 images here, and we also have the bottom option in the select box is everything, all kinds of items. So this is probably not quite so useful, but it can be handy sometimes if you just want to check for something that you've forgotten to name, or you just want to check all items for whatever reason. Okay, go back to bodies here, and we'll have a look at this other thing we have here, which is the hierarchical tree of the structure that exists in the scene. So bodies have fixtures which belong to them, because fixtures don't exist without a body, and bodies can also have images attached to them. In this case we can see here the car body has one image. This is an image. You can match these up with the icons above here to see what these icons mean. So we have one image and 2 fixtures attached to this car body here. So sometimes there's a lot of fixtures, like this one here we have 8 fixtures on the player foot, or the player lower body, so we can see them all in this structure like that. And the other type of item that has a structure is joints, because a joint always connects 2 bodies, apart from gear joints, but we won't be looking at gear joints. So all of these joints, if we expand the hierarchy, we can see that they each have 2 bodies that belong to them, or well, joints don't really own a body, because bodies can exist without the joints, and a body can have a whole bunch of joints. But one thing to note here is that a body appearing twice in this view doesn't mean that there are two separate bodies, because obviously this antenna 1, when we mouse over it, we can see that it's the same body in the scene. So this is not really an ownership tree, it's just a connection tree. And we can mouse, not mouse down, what am I saying? We can drill down further to see everything that the body owns in the same view. And we can select them all as well, so I can select these two fixtures just as if I was selecting in when I had the fixtures selected in this option. So this is quite a handy way to select and find things, and we can also rename things like this. So we can give things new names, and yeah, very handy little view. We can select everything. We're in joints at the moment, so we're selecting all the joints. Where are we? Joints. And we can select nothing, all nothing. I'll just go back to bodies for a second, so that's easier to see. Close these down. Okay, so all bodies, no bodies. And another way we can select things is by right-clicking on them over here, and we can see the same kind of tree structure as we have here. So if I, to illustrate that, let's do this is a good joint here, because if I right-click on this one, this is antenna pivot 1, which joins the car body and antenna body 1, and then we can go down here further and we can see the fixtures that belong to this body. And we can also see in here a little check mark, and we can select or deselect these. It doesn't actually show a little checkbox in here, which I'm not sure why that is. On this version of Linux it doesn't seem to show that, but I think at least on Windows and Macs you should see a little checkbox in here to make it a little bit more obvious that you can select things in this view. And this right click menu can be quite handy when you have two things in the same place. So if I have two identical fixed bodies in the same place, and go back to body mode. Now if I right click on there, if I let the tooltip show up, it tells me that there's multiple bodies there. So if there's one body, the tooltip will show you the data for that body. Otherwise you'll have to right click on it, and then you'll be able to differentiate the two bodies that are at that point by using this menu rather than just a simple left click. So if I wanted to select just the one of these bodies, then I could use this checkbox here to do that, like that. So now if I move, I'll just deselect that one. Now if I move this, I'm only moving one of those bodies, whereas before I would have been moving both of them if I had just clicked on here. Okay, and up at the top here we have a filter input, and this lets you search for bodies with names or fixtures with names or whatever you happen to be looking at the time. We'll start with bodies to use this. And as soon as you start typing something in here, I've just hit the say A key, it will filter the list below so that only bodies with an A in the name show up. And if we keep typing, so let's say we could do R, everything with AR is now showing. So this is a quick way to find things when the list gets larger. And this is what I call a top-down search, and we can change it to a bottom-up search by clicking the little magnifying glass icon here, and when we click that we'll see a plus icon, a plus inside the icon. And to explain what that does, because it's a little bit complicated, or it's not complicated, but it's not very intuitive, I have to admit. What it does is, let's say if we go back to joints, which has a larger hierarchy, let's look at this joint that we were looking at before. This is the antenna pivot at the base of the antenna here, this one. So we can see that there's quite a hierarchy underneath this joint because it has two bodies and then they each have some fixtures and some images. So what this little plus does is, rather than filtering the top level of this tree, which in this case is joints, it doesn't filter these joints. It looks all the way down to the bottom of the tree at this bottom level, and it filters based on these names at the bottom level of the tree. So what can we look at here as an example? I think these little fixtures here around here are called foot or feet or something. So let's say I can't remember which body or which joint they were related to, but I know they are related to something because I can see there's a joint there, and it must be connecting the body that's holding these fixtures. So if I type foot, okay, well that's not a very good example because the joint is named foot as well, but okay, let's just rename that foot to something else, and let's try this again. Okay, now if I type foot, it doesn't quite seem to make sense because nothing in here matches what I've typed, but because I have the little plus icon here, I'm doing a bottom up search, so it means that something underneath here, indeed right at the bottom level, has matched what I'm looking for. So yeah, I'm sorry that that's a little bit unintuitive, but it can be quite useful. Once again, not in a scene like this obviously, but when you get really large scenes, this can be quite handy to have. Okay, I think that about covers it. Oh, and of course remember, when you're doing this all and none, you can do things like, let me just get rid of this. Say I want to select all of the bodies that start with the word body. I can quickly do that by just typing a couple of letters and clicking all. So if I'm in body mode, that's those two bodies I had there. So when you click all, it doesn't apply to everybody in the scene, it just applies to the bodies that are showing in the filter at the current time. So you could also do that to select everything except for a certain bunch of bodies. So if I use Control A to select everything, and then I go and tap like that, and then I can select none, that will just deselect these two bodies here. So you can use that to quite good effect sometimes by mixing and matching these sort of all and none in the filter settings there. Okay, so that's enough of that. And next thing we'll look at is the properties panel, and this is fairly straightforward. It just shows you the properties of the thing that you have currently selected, like this. So we have bodies here, we can see all the properties for bodies, and this is quite similar to a lot of other programs, so I don't think it needs too much explanation. But there's one or two things that are specific to RUBE. One thing is that we have this type here, which is a vector type, 2D vector. So when you click in here and if you try and enter just a number like 1, 2, 3, you'll be told that you're supposed to put two numbers in there separated by a comma. So that's a 2D vector type that RUBE knows about. Another thing here is we have angles, and they can be represented as degrees or radians if you prefer, which you probably don't, but we can display angle properties in degrees as the default. You can just switch that to radians. So now we're looking at radians there. Well, they're 0, but I mean, if it was not 0, you would see the numbers changing. Yeah. So the exact what we can do with these settings here will be looked at later on, because they get quite specific. If I'm in fixture mode and I select a fixture, all these settings are different, and for joints obviously they're all different again, and each type of joint even has different types of properties. So if I have a distance joint selected here, and if I select a revolute joint, we'll see the properties change, and the wheel joint again, they're all different. So the joint types in particular deserve a video of their own, really, to cover all the things you can do with them. So I won't go into too much more detail about the properties panel in this video, apart from one thing which should be mentioned. I'll just switch back to bodies. If we have, say, a bunch of bodies selected, sometimes we see this multiple display here, and what that means is that there's the tooltip telling us what it means. It means that you've selected more than one body and they have different values for that property. So obviously they have different names, so names showing up as multiple, but that doesn't mean that we can't change it. So if I click here to change it, I can actually enter another name. But the thing to be careful about is that when you do this for a property that was multiple, it gets applied to all the selected properties, so that all of these 5 bodies I have selected here will be called another name now. We can just check that in the items panel like that. Oops, stop. So we didn't really want to do that. So you can undo that. What else should I mention about that? Probably nothing really further needs to be said at this point. Okay, and the last panel that was specific to documents was not that one, this one, script panel. And in here we have what I call a live script. So scripts can be put into files and placed into this thing here I call the action menu. So each one of these actions that we perform on the scene like that, this is actually a script that originally the way I made these menus was by writing the script in the script menu, and then when I had something that I liked, I put it into a file and then placed it to be callable from one of these menus. So contrary to these ones which are not live scripts, they are kind of pre-prepared. This script here is a live script, and as soon as we click the run button here, or we hit F5, where is it? Yes, or we can select this menu item here, this script will be run. So in this case, if I hit F5 here, this script, what this does is it gets the body named car and deletes it. Fortunately, we can undo scripts, so I can just undo that and recover any changes. So that's quite handy if you're developing a script and you don't really know exactly what it's going to do. It doesn't really matter, because you can just undo everything to get back to the situation that you started with. So scripts can get quite complicated. Deleting is pretty simple. Select, let's say nothing was selected in the scene, and I run this script. So this time we just selected the body named car, we didn't delete it. And you can put loops in here, and you can you can do a whole lot of stuff with scripts. So scripts really should be and will be the subject of a whole another video, maybe even 2 or 3 videos in the future. So suffice to say for now that what you type in here can be immediately run and applied to the scene. and if there are mistakes in it, like if I put some extraneous text in there, it gets compiled automatically every 3 seconds, I think, and you'll see the results of the compilation down here if something went wrong, and you can see which lines had a problem. Okay, we didn't get past that point, but we should be able to see some problems here with the script on line 5. Yep. So ASDFL is not declared. So this is AngelScript. If you don't know about AngelScript, you should. Well, it's kind of like JavaScript, but it can run a little bit faster because it's strongly typed. So I chose it over JavaScript for this purpose. And you can use this button here just to hide and show the feedback here. And this feedback panel here can also be used to print out text like this. And if I run this script, it just shows me whatever I put in there. So I can do things like get all bodies. This will return an array of bodies. So if I print that array, this print function can take bodies and print them out like this. Of course, you can loop through the array and do things with it as well. But yeah, so I shouldn't really get into that too much because there's a lot to it. I should mention though that the print function that I just used there, this one, this is disabled in the trial version so that you don't write an exporter yourself, you sneaky people. Okay, I think that's about all we needed to cover here. Right, I'll see you next time.